everyone, and thank you for attending this event sponsored by the Society of Professional Journalists New England chapter. My name is Chloe Clark, and I'm here this afternoon with Lesley Visser. Lesley Visser is the most highly acclaimed female sports broadcaster of her time. Her trailblazing career led to her being inducted in 6 Hall of Fames and numerous awards, including the Emmy Sports Lifetime Achievement Award. She's often recognized as the first woman enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, the first woman to report from a Super Bowl sideline, the first woman to cover the NFL as a beat, the first and only woman to present the championship Lombardi Trophy at the Super Bowl, the first female sportscaster to carry the Olympic torch, the first woman on a Monday Night Football, and the first female analyst in both radio and television. We could go on, but there isn't enough time to list all of her many accomplishments. So without further ado, Lesley, thank you for joining us.
Oh, Chloe, it's so great to meet you and spend time with you and hear that you want to get into the business.
Yes, definitely. So we can get started with your personal journey and learn from there. Growing up in Quincy, Massachusetts, talk to me how you developed an interest in sports journalism.
Oh, I didn't always live in Quincy. I was born in Boston, but my family moved about 11 times. And the great thing was that you could always, sports was like a language that everybody spoke, and it was a way to get into the neighborhood in and out. But Boston, I'm a child of Boston sports. And I mean, your grandparents would tell you this. Are you from Boston, Chloe?
I am not. I'm
You're not.
from Los Angeles.
Well, people who are from Boston of the age I am, that we grew up with Ted Williams, Bobby Orr, the great number 4, and Bill Russell. So it was just this embarrassment of riches. I think that I was in high school before the Celtics lost the NBA championship. That's like how, what a wonderful, magical trip it was. But I always wanted to cover sports, other young people, they grow up, they love music, or maybe they love poetry. They want to be a writer, which was also part of my goal. I wanted to be a sports writer, which didn't exist for women. But I had such talent to learn from. The great Kirk Gowdy, one of the most legendary broadcasters, that's who brought me the Red Sox when I was a child, listening to him and the great writers in the Globe and the Herald. So I don't know. I feel like I was blessed. I didn't have any natural advantage. My dad was from Amsterdam, and my mom was from a dignified but lower middle class Irish family out in the Berkshires. So I didn't have any connections, but I feel like just being born in Boston and being around those high achievers really helped me.
Yeah, you mentioned your parents. What did they initially have? What was their feedback in you wanting to pursue this career that wasn't so common at the time for girls and young women?
Yeah, my dad didn't get it. If you come from Amsterdam, they're speed skaters, and to have this child who loved football, basketball, and baseball, he wasn't really in my life that much. It's kind of wherever we moved, he would move to the next place. So, but my mom did love sports, and we were living in Cincinnati when I was about 10 or 11 years old. She was a teacher, and she said to me, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And I said, "I want to be a sports writer," which didn't exist for women. And instead of saying, "Oh, you can't do that, girls don't do that," she said, "That's great. Sometimes you have to cross when it says don't walk."
Nice.
Very
Yeah,
powerful. Yeah.
very powerful. So what were action steps taken after that conversation, after your mother was so encouraging of you to pursue that career?
Well, I followed sports naturally, which a lot of young people do. You do too. If you want to, work in the NBA, it's probably a second nature to you, the language that you're very comfortable. But we moved. I finally went to high school in the Berkshires, and I think I wrote for my high school paper, which was also unheard of. Who's this girl? But they were terrible assignments. What does the quarterback's girlfriend do? Before the game, and it just it wasn't at all. I wanted to be at the Final Four or the
Right.
NBA Finals. And then when I was a junior in college, maybe a sophomore at Boston College, I applied for a Carnegie Foundation grant, which for anyone watching this, internships, they're the way to go. And if somehow your family can help you, they're often there for free or very low stipend. but they are the way to get in there. And I applied for a Carnegie Foundation grant in 1973. It was open to 20 women across the country who wanted to go into jobs that were 95% male. Now, I know this sounds like the 1800s, but all white collar jobs were male. And a woman from Michigan got it for archaeology. A woman from Johns Hopkins got it for ophthalmology. And I got it because I wanted to be a sports writer. So I went I guess it was my junior year. I went down to the Boston Globe. I had great help from the people at BC. After I won this, they set up an interview, and I went down to the Globe, and the Globe didn't have to pay. So I spent the summer of my junior year, and then the Globe, I spent my whole senior year working at the Globe as like a high school football correspondent. And I loved it. I loved it. I thought, I can't believe, okay, I'm taking the ferry to Martha's Vineyard in the rain and I'm keeping the stats and, but I said, what could be greater than this?
Definitely. And you talk about how it was a position not open to a lot of males. And we know journalism is historically heavily dominated by males. So where do you think your defiance and passion stemmed from?
I think a few things. One, I authentically love sports. Sometimes I say there are two kinds of women who do what I do. There are women who want to be on TV and they end up in sports. And then there are women who love sports and they end up in TV. And I was definitely the latter. I had no notion of television, but I really always wanted to be a writer, which I think helped me greatly when I got to TV because I had a vocabulary. I knew what I was looking at. But I believe that my passion outweighed the hurdles. When I was in my early 20s, the Boston Globe made me the first woman to cover the NFL as a beat. So there were no provisions for equality, no locker room access. So, I'd be out there in the parking lot for 5 years trying to nab an athlete to talk about the game. But I just felt like I can't believe I'm getting paid to go to Wimbledon. I'm getting paid to go to the Super Bowl and do what I love. So I think for young people, you should never care about the money because, I say I don't have $1 billion, but I've had $1 billion life.
Yes, that's very special. And you touched upon earlier about how your foundations as a writer helped with that pivot with your vocabulary on air. But I was kind of more curious about, how did that translation from print really help with your success at CBS and at the NFL?
Oh, my first TV assignments, I looked like I had rigor mortis. I'm not kidding. It'd be like, I knew all the sports, and having a vocabulary really helps for yourself, Chloe, for anybody, young person going into it. There are so many empty words that people use all the time. The word awesome, that means nothing. Does it mean it was surprising or it was overwhelming or what was it? Was it, it had never happened before, but people just use that word and it's a wasted word to me. Or the word unbelievable. If something happened, then it's believable. So why waste your time or space in either writing or on television with words that don't, empty words. So we weren't allowed that at the Globe. The Globe got voted the best sports section in America every single year. I mean, we were the 27 Yankees. It was Peter Gammons on baseball, Bob Ryan on basketball. Bud Collins taught America how to watch tennis. So, and how to read about it, and the great Will McDonough on football. So I really came from a very hardcore training. Like the Globe, you didn't take the floor unless you had something interesting or novel to say. You just listened. So when I got to TV, I knew the sports really well, but I had no idea of the technology of television. Like, how you're raised, if someone speaks, you stop talking. Well, in television, they talk in your ear all the time. So, I'd kind of stop and then be like screaming, Lesley, in my ear, what are you doing? Just stand there. So, I had to learn that what I used to write on deadline, now I just have to say on deadline.
Mm-hmm. And earlier you touched upon how your passion outweighed the criticism or the backlash that you received, in that time where, as you mentioned, there was no woman or children in the press box. So although every first does come with hurdles, and although your passion may have outweighed all the negatives, was there a big obstacle that you did have to overcome along the journey to the top?
Oh yeah, a lot of them because when I started was a fascinating time in this country. I'm going to sort of take a side path here, but I marched for Roe v. Wade 50 years ago. I can't believe that I'm out there marching for it again. So when I came along, it was a time of civil rights and equal rights. And I had the blessing, if you come from New England or especially born in Boston, you have an ethic that is about equality, I think, for all. And certainly the Globe made room for me, which showed they were ready to diversify. And I think that it's important for people to take a wider view of what they're doing, that we see people from, you should know the history, for instance, of civil rights in sports. It was Jackie Robinson, then Jim Brown, then Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, then Colin Kaepernick, more recently LeBron James, of course, Jackie Robinson in there. People should know the history of how something happened that allows mine started with the suffragettes and women getting the right to vote. And then Billie Jean King, it was my sophomore year in college, maybe my junior year, that Billie Jean, which is going to be 50 years ago next year, she beat Bobby Riggs. And that was the seminal moment of the women's movement. It was a woman taking on a former Wimbledon champion, which Bobby Riggs was. And she knew that 90 million people watched that. I mean, that's just an insane number of people. And she took it on to take the chance, and she beat him. And it was about gender equity and social equity and financial equity. So I think I had a sense of who and what came before me, and that I was going to be authentic.
Mm, mm. Now, I know that you had written a memoir which touched upon breaking barriers, and the barrier itself is defined as an obstacle that prevents movement or access. So describe to me how you took initiative and stayed true to yourself in creating access for yourself when it wasn't a time that allowed for
Yeah, that's a great way. You're going to make it, Chloe. No, that's a great question, a great way to put it. What I did for myself, I wasn't a storm the barricades type, because every time it was somebody giving me a chance, and I felt that my sort of whole ethic or philosophy was I'm going to make every at bat a quality at bat, and it didn't matter if I had the smallest assignment, or the Super Bowl or the World Series. It was. I remember someone wrote me a letter at the Globe that I wrote the hell out of badminton. And I was so excited because badminton means a lot to some people, and that I had, either earned their respect or their trust that I could cover that sport. So I think some people just look right ahead. They don't say, what am I doing today? What am I doing right now that will serve my viewers or readers and serve my career and my passion? They just look right ahead to, okay, I want to, I want to be at the Olympics covering figure skating.
Mm, yeah. Now, I know that in previous interviews, you said that you took on your career with humor despite the criticisms or the backlash. How did you maintain that mental toughness throughout?
Yeah, I used humor as a default mechanism because I thought that, well, first of all, we had no human resource. I mean, there was nobody to talk to. And I was really afraid that if I said anything to the Globe, they'd say, well, we tried a woman covering the NFL and it didn't really make it. And if I said anything to the NFL, they might say the same thing. So I really just handled it all internally. My closest girlfriends heard all about it. I mean, I have a lot of scar tissue, but in public, if a lot of players, it was new to them too, right? To have a woman on the beat. And if they would say something inappropriate, instead of getting all, oh, what are you doing? I'd say something like, now your mother didn't teach you to talk like that.
Mm,
And then we'd laugh. Most players don't want to embarrass their mothers.
yeah,
So it was a lot of navigation, but humor worked for me. And being lucky to be born in Boston, we're funny people.
exactly. Yeah. So you said that you handled a lot of it internally. Would you say that you had more of a competition with yourself at all, or were there any mental health issues that you may have touched upon along the way?
Looking back on it, I'm sure that I I put things in a place that now maybe I would address, or young people today address. Thank you, Simone Biles. But back then, boy, nobody would have wanted to hear it. I couldn't even have cramps. I'm sorry if there are any men listening, but you get it, Chloe. I mean, it was always men. I was 100% around men. They didn't have a bathroom, a ladies' room when I started because there were no women. So it was a lot of kind of not wanting to complain, but I'm sure I had to put things, in a certain place that, I don't know, should I get around to it now? Is it too late?
Now, you mentioned that, or did you have any female mentors? Because you mentioned that, touching upon these personal issues such as, cramps or menstrual issues, did you have any female mentors that you were able to talk to?
No, none. There had been no women, and none, zero. I mean, my roommates were in different, after you get out of college, and a bunch of girls, we lived together, and none of them was in the business. So, they'd tell me whatever their stories were. From women were just starting to go to law school and medical school in great numbers. So, in my profession, it was singular, but a lot of other women were going through in their profession. So we'd share that, but I wore low heels at my first NFL game on the field because I didn't know. Same with the NBA. I had no role model. How do I dress? So it just was, every aspect of it was a learning process.
In prior interviews, you explained during a year in the NFL, if you ever got a cliche answer, you would say, not good enough, try again. So in getting those genuine and raw responses, what would you say is key in fostering that open communication and trust with your athlete or your subject?
Yeah, I'll tell you a couple secrets. One, yeah, those would be in feature interviews. And I went through a phase where I was just eating bags of M&Ms all the time. So like if somebody gave me a really lame answer, I would just shake the M&Ms in front of them. Not good enough. Yeah, try again. Part of that, though, is that I probably didn't ask a good enough question. A lot of times if someone asks a cliche question, it's like they, on your playlist, you hit a certain song, they just hit that cliche answer. So I took partly responsibility for that. But I think you have to approach them not in a cardboard way. It has to be that they have a life. What I've always found helpful, and maybe this might be helpful for you too, that, okay, you're doing the NBA, you're talking to the Celtics. Well, one of the highest ranked tennis players in the world, Nick Kyrgios, he's from Australia. He is a Celtic fanatic. Matter of fact, if the Celtics lose, like he'll stream them. If he's playing in China, he'll stream them on his phone. And if they lose, he has a hard time concentrating in his next match. So it's kind of like if you talk to them about something else, rather than just coming out with the question right away. I don't mean when you're, post game or when you have to have it right then, but certainly to make relationships, talking about other things, recognizing them as fellow human beings, I think really helps.
Yes. So recognizing these athletes as human beings and knowing that they have their own stories, we know that sports is definitely a playing field to tell those stories about society and the impacts that it does have. So I know that you were the first woman sportscaster to carry the Olympic torch. Explain to me the impact that you personally believe sports has on an international level.
Well, I had the privilege, and I don't even know what the biggest word for privilege is, but I met Nelson Mandela. And I will tell you, there was an aura around him. I'm not a particularly religious person, but there was an aura around him. And Nelson Mandela said, sport has the power to change the world. And we see that. We see when Somalia is trying to compete in the World Cup, or we see when, great athletes become immigrants in other countries and they play so well. I mean, look at Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? We have so many international players here in the United States. And I do think sport can change. I mean, look at the women's soccer. It changes how we view maybe women's sports, women themselves, the fact that they marry some of, it's an LGBTQ community. When I first met Martina, she had just come out, but Billie Jean did not come out for a while because the times weren't right for it. So I think sports can change the world, and what's better than that?
One of the biggest stories you covered was the fall of the Berlin Wall. How did you approach that story?
Oh, I've had a couple of times that my jaw just fell open that I was given an assignment. It was in 1989, of course. Ronald Reagan had said before when he spoke at the Berlin Wall, Mr. Gorbachev, who we just lost, a great international man, and Reagan said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And so in 89, which really led to the fall of communism. In 1990 was when the USSR fell apart. But in 1989, uh, Germany was losing. People were risking their lives as they had for 20 years to cross that wall. And CBS, of course, we had Dan Rather, all our major uh, news people, but they sent me to do a story on how would sports change? Because before that, what was it? East Germany in one Olympics won like 3 medals, and the next one they won 100 because they were all doping. And I have friends here in the United States, Olympians, Nancy Hogshead, people who competed against these doped up Eastern German women who were probably young and naive and got in the system before they had any idea. But I got to go through Checkpoint Charlie into East Berlin, and it was like going from color to black and white. The people were huddled, they were oppressed, they were looking down. I remember the hotel toilet paper was like sandpaper, and they were just really a quarter of a mile apart. So it's, and I got to witness people who walk for days from Potsdam and Dresden through the Brandenburg Gate just to taste freedom.
Yeah, yeah. You talked about witnessing that firsthand, and being a reporter, you definitely do interview a lot of individuals, get to know their stories, and just overall experience a lot of different things. So what is your favorite moment that you've experienced over your time covering sports?
Oh gosh, that's great. I would say that would be one of them. I was on the field when the Patriots made the great comeback to win their first Super Bowl against the Rams. And as that had been, the Patriots had to sign off on me becoming the beat writer too. So I just to be there for it. And of course, that was after 9/11. And I remember Robert Kraft said, "Today we are all patriots." It was such, a profound time in America. But I would say, yeah, I mean, I got to go back with Martina the first time she went back to Prague after she had defected. I guess all the stories that mean the most to me remind me of how lucky we are to be American, especially you mentioned the fall of the Berlin Wall. My dad grew up under the Nazis in Amsterdam. So that actually helped me because sometimes when something would be particularly tough, it really wasn't as tough as being under the German boot for 6 years. So it gave me a perspective. But in 1985, I think, Martina Navratilova, who had defected to the United States, very, very brave, 10 years before, and she went back under the protection of the US government. Once Martina left Czechoslovakia, which was still communist, they never mentioned her name. She won 5 Wimbledons in a row. She had won 7 Wimbledons before she went back to Prague with the Federation Cup, which is like the Women's Davis Cup. And I remember it was some airline, Maliv Airlines from Hungary. We flew into Prague and they had no jetway. And it was raining and you had to come down the stairs. And all I remember is that there were thousands of people behind a chain link fence in the rain who had defied the Czech government to go see Martina. And it had spread by word of mouth. The great Martina is coming home.
Wow. So along with amazing stories like that and covering the Olympics, which not many people have the opportunity to do, you are the only sportscaster in history who has worked on the Final Four, the NBA Finals, World Series, Triple Crown, Monday Night Football, the Super Bowl, World Figure Skating Championships, and the US Open. With all of these accolades, are those benchmarks of success for you, or what defines greatness for you personally?
I think I had a lot of opportunity. I've never been hired by a woman, and a lot of men took a chance on me for all those events. And At CBS now, we have a talk show called We Need to Talk, and it's all women. And that is so gratifying to me that, and I'll tell you, we talk ball. It's Lisa Leslie and Swin Cash. I mean, it's truly what I could never have imagined. So I feel, it's not for me to say what my success has been, but I feel enormous gratitude, at all the men who gave me an opportunity. And now that somebody like yourself, Chloe, or any women who are listening, you can do whatever it is you want to do, because I'm the example, you can do it.
Mhm. Now, looking at journalism through the years and what you've experienced firsthand, what is your view on the evolution and the current state of journalism that we've reached today?
Well, two things. It's not moving fast enough for women for me, but that's probably predictable. But I just read a stat, 79% of sports editors are white and 83% of them are men. So, I'd like it to move a little faster. I also, I'm not a hot take person, which I know is very, it's in vogue now,
Mhm.
but I was trained as someone, you had to have sources, it had to be researched. And now I guess that sells, just, throw it up against the wall and let people respond to it. And I have women friends who are much younger, like yourself, in the business, and they get it. That's something for them. Did the Celtics have the best NBA offseason? Maybe they did. So that's a topic. But I just sort of came from prove it that they did. So I don't know, but I think there's a lot of opportunity. I mean, women can aspire to be on talk shows or reporters. They can be in the booth. They can be part of owning a team, as so many women, particularly WNBA women, they're now part owners. So I like that the landscape has a lot of room.
Yes, and you definitely helped shape and move forward that landscape. I know that in 2006, Troy Aikman said in his induction speech that you brought respect and professionalism to the field of journalism for your work. What do you think is an important trait that you got that helped bring you to this point in your career?
I think it was that I think I had the three non-negotiables that I think young people or anybody in the business has to have. Uh, I think you have to have passion. If you don't love it, don't do it, because it's hard, and it's hard to make look easy, which is a trick. That it's hard. And secondly, I think you have to have knowledge. Knowledge gives you confidence. You have to know what you're looking at. You have to have the vocabulary to express it. You have to be curious. You have to want to know about that person or that team or that league. And you have to have stamina. You have to know that the Ferris wheel is going to come down. I mean, it wasn't always great for me. I had a lot of hard days, hard weeks. So I think you have to keep things in perspective, that you're doing it because you love it and that you're grateful for the opportunity.
Do you have any advice to young women that are maybe in the predicament right now where they're trying to figure out if they want to continue the career in journalism or not?
Well, I would say a couple things. I think what will tell you if you are authentically suited for this is if you watch a game and you turn down the sound. And do you really see what's happening? Can you, like if I were sitting next to you or anyone, can you really tell me what are the Celtics doing? I guess it's easy to see what Steph Curry's doing, right? He comes into the building and and shoots and it goes in. But like, that's a conversation. I had a long conversation with Bill Walton about it. Do you like the NBA now that it used to be post play? Now it goes into the post and it goes back, to the arc. And he said, yeah, it's just an evolution. But everybody can't be Steph Curry. It's like the great Ted Williams. Someone said, well, you're such a natural hitter. And he said, well, I'm a natural hitter because I take 1,000 swings a day. So, Steph Curry is out there after everybody. But I think that it will tell you if you really want to do the work. And I think that, I think it will tell you, or if you're suited for something else.
Yes, yes. It's definitely a career that you have to be, hard-headed for it and persistent. And I know one of the obstacles that many females may face within this field is sexual harassment and verbal abuse. So talk to me about if that was anything that you experienced and how you react to that.
Yeah, not so much. I have to say the Globe guys were great. I mean, it was more pickup basketball than pickup at the bar. But yeah, sure, there were players who you know, wanted something else, wanted something more, and I would have to manage that without I didn't complain to anyone. And yeah, that was definitely, although this is how far it's come. A couple years ago, you'll laugh at this. A couple years ago at the Super Bowl, when the Super Bowl was in Atlanta, I had a baseball cap pulled down and it was practice. And, you know, I was just watching practice. And so some player along the way came over, gave me, I'm sure you'll get it lots, Chloe. Yo, baby, you know, what are you doing later? And I pushed my cap back and I said, "Are you kidding? I'm on Medicare." And he ran away like he was Usain Bolt across the what did I just do? So yeah, I think when I started in the NFL, you know, players didn't get it, coaches didn't get it. The first thing Chuck Fairbanks, who was the coach from the Patriots, I asked him some question and he, you know, he looked at me like, "What is this?" And he said, "You know, maybe you ought to go to lunch with my daughter. You're about the same age," which was like so diminishing. I say this to anybody, this could be men too, but you can be the best prepared and you can really know what you're doing, but no one prepares you for humiliation.
Mm,
And that, Chloe, mind those words, because there are going to be times that you will be stopped in your tracks like, wow, where'd that come from?
yeah, yeah. I know that we have a question in the chat,
Sure.
so I'll read it off. How did the NFL react when you started covering the Patriots? And did you get support in the newsroom from some of the legendary reports you mentioned, like Will McDonough?
Yeah, my thank you, whoever asked that. Thank you so much. It wouldn't have happened for me without Will McDonough. Will McDonough called Billy Sullivan, who was then the owner of the Patriots, and he said, you know, Willie was from Southie, so it was out the side of his mouth. By the way, we're pretty sure that Whitey Bulger was at Will McDonough's funeral because Will knew everybody, had everybody's phone numbers. He'd visited Whitey at Leavenworth. And yeah, we're pretty sure that Billy Bulger was, well, Billy Bulger, who was the president of the Mass Senate, was one of the pallbearers. But Will McDonough called Billy Sullivan, and this is exactly what he said: "Billy, we're going to have a woman on the beat, and that's that. Click." So I had great support from the Globe people, and I did try to go at it as if this was new for them too, for the players. I mean, it was new for all of us. The wives hated me. I'd be out in the parking lot trying to do the, you know, the interviews, and the wives would all be over by the cars, like, are they after my husband? You know, is she after my husband? So it was it was a lot of dancing, but yeah, the Globe guys were great.
In another question in the chat, alluding to your previous answer regarding humiliation, he's asking, how did you deal with that when you did get stopped in your tracks, and does it get easier?
It doesn't get easier, but I'll give you an example of humiliation. It was, I had gone from the Boston Globe to CBS. I never had like time in Dubuque or someplace, you know, to get used to things or make my mistakes. And one of my first assignments was the US Open. My very first assignment was the iconic Celtics Lakers in '84, which people can argue is the greatest series ever. I believe it
Mm,
was. But in '85, I was doing the US Open, which I'd covered for the Globe many times with Bud Collins, of course, also paving the way. And there was a young player named Hanna Mandlikova, and she had come from Prague. Martina was her idol, and she had a great run that summer. And she was out on court 16, and Brent Musburger, for those who remember, he was our great host. And Brent said, "Well, let's go out to Lesley Visser, who's with Hanna Mandlikova on like court 16 at the US Open." And so, did I mention that I was new to TV? Oh, yeah, right. And did I mention that she was from Prague, so she had an accent? Okay, so I say, you know, and I look stiff, which I was, and I said, "Hannah, to what do you attribute your sudden rise in the rankings? You went from 55th in the world up to 5th." And Hannah said, and this is when there were only 3 networks, so everything was on network television. And Hannah said, "Well, I think it is my new couch." So I thought, I don't know, maybe she's sleeping better or something. I don't know. So I said, "Oh, did you get some new furniture?" And Hannah looked at me on network television and said, Don't be ridiculous. Billie Jean King, my new coach. That's right. That's right. Pretty embarrassing. My new coach. So, of course, Brent Musburger's head hit the table. They played it every year at the CBS seminars. So I actually, when she said it, I laughed. I mean, how ridiculous. She must have thought, what does she ask me about furniture for when I'm talking about my coach? So anyway, you can survive. I tell people you too can survive humiliation and embarrassment.
Yes, definitely. So if there are no more questions in the chat, I would like to kind of wrap it up and ask, through your journey in sports journalism, what would you say you learned about yourself in every experience, through every success, through every criticism, every backlash?
Oh, thanks. That's great. I've learned that I do know how to work really hard. I know how to enjoy the moment. There was a great sports writer, Red Smith, who once at the Kentucky Derby, he used to sort of anoint a young writer and ask him to walk the infield. And Red Smith said to me, Lesley, this is the only advice I'm going to give you. Whatever you do, wherever you go, make a memory. And I have done that. I was I did the first interview with Yao Ming in China, in Shanghai, before he came to America. And I looked around and I said, you know, China then was just emerging from communism. And I said, you know, make a memory. You're given these gifts of going these places and talking to these enormously accomplished people. So you have to take something from it. So I would say that I didn't waste the opportunities or the time. I made sure that I listened and I learned. And, you know, I think I'm still at CBS, so I must still be doing it.
Right, right. There was one final question in the chat that asked, what was the best interview you had?
Well, you know, I adore Billie Jean King. So I've learned probably the most from her, although I think it was with Arthur Ashe, because Arthur, he did so much so quietly, you know, he had such grace, and yet he went to South Africa to protest apartheid. You know, he was from Richmond, Virginia, not wealthy, but he went on to really battle racism. And I would say spending some time with him, or my idol as a child, besides Billie Jean, was the great Sam Jones, who played for the Celtics. He just died last year. And I stayed close with Sam. I used to dress up as Sam on Halloween. Other girls would go as Mary Poppins. And I stayed really close to Sam. And the last time I talked to him on the phone was probably about 6 months before he died. And he was telling me, he lived in the Jacksonville area, and he was telling me that still, if he were stopped late at night by the police, that he said, and I love the police, you know, I golf, well, they're all my buddies, but still, if it were late at night and it didn't look good, I would not reach for my license. And I said, Sam, you got to be kidding. You're Sam Jones. He said, well, you know, you don't know if it's late at night and if something happens. And he told me I would rather go to the police station than the grave. So I've taken it all in, the good, the bad. It's just been such a privilege.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you. It's been a privilege to interview you and gain as much insight as possible from your career and the experiences that you had. It was great to just soak it all in. And I appreciate your time again and just for being here.
Yeah, Chloe, promise me you won't quit, because I will hunt you down like a dog if you don't hang in. All right? Promise me?
Yes, I promise.
Excellent. That's a deal. And thanks to Adam for setting this up. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.